Hello and welcome. My name is Lorraine Davies, and I am a personal transformation and energy mastery coach and the host of this summit, the expansion, Unleash Your Infinite Potential and Reclaim the Power Within. I am so excited to be joined by the incredible Brooke Kekos today. And I'm gonna just give you a little bit of a kind of a bio, a bit of information about Brooke, and then we're going to get into the juicy stuff, the really lovely conversation that we get to have today. So Brooke is a trauma healing coach, rapid transformational therapist, and NLP practitioner. And she specialises in empowering survivors to rewrite their story, which is going to be the focus of today's conversation. She is a sought-after speaker, a soon-to-be author, that's very exciting too, and a fervent advocate against religious abuse, domestic violence. Her voice resonates way beyond the confines of her coaching business. And I know that what she's going to share with us today is founded on the basis of authenticity, drawing on soul-aligned relationships and fostering your truest self. Does that kind of cover it?
Yeah, completely. I love it. You did a great job. That's a great introduction. So thank you for having me here and introducing me that way. I appreciate it.
You are honestly so welcome, and it's such a pleasure to have you with us today. So obviously the topic of this summit is expansion, and I truly believe that that starts from this place of kind of knowing ourselves and doing this healing piece. So I'd love it if you'd start by sharing a bit of your story and kind of what it took to rewrite your own life.
I love that. Yes. And those words are exactly what I feel so called to talk about is the rewriting of your own life and how that is even a possibility, right? Sometimes I think we get really stuck in this complacency of, well, I guess this is my life. This is what I've been given. And this is where I have to stay. I have to stay in this. And the parts of my life where I felt like I finally had to break free from kind of being that victim or being stuck was because I was raised in an environment that wasn't a healthy environment, right? I was raised by an abusive father. The relationship that I was modeled within my parents' relationship was the woman had to be in subjection. The woman did just so, and the man was the person that got to do whatever he wanted. It didn't matter how he acted. And we had to tiptoe around him, right? And be just so because I was raised in a cult that was very demanding, highly controlling, shunning if you didn't do what you were supposed to, and then also punishment if you didn't. And it was the same dynamic at home. So it was very similar, right? So being raised in that, I always perpetually felt like I was not enough. I could never do anything right for the religion standards or for my father's standards. And so it was like, like started to throw my hands up when I became a teenager and be like, why do I even want to try to do this anymore? This is exhausting. And I rebelled, right? I was so tired of this restriction and the you have to do this and you have to dress this way and you have to act this way and you have to be perfect. I was like, well, I'm going to be everything but. I'm going to be everything but. And I didn't realize that my spirit, was just like, no, I'm not, I cannot conform. But that's really who I was. I didn't want to conform anymore. And so the more that I pushed that envelope, it was like the more that my parents wanted to restrict me. And that's when I, ended up getting trapped into another abusive relationship with a partner and got married and stayed in that relationship for 17 years because that's, again, all I ever knew. I didn't know any different. Still stayed in that cult, still was very much in that belief system. Couldn't see outside of it because we were not allowed to use our critical thinking. And then in 2017, I started to see through the religion because my then husband actually started to do his own research and kind of awakened me to the truth of it. And that made me say, oh, okay, something's not right here. And then it awakened me to see, oh, well, maybe something's not right with my relationship. Maybe I'm in an abusive relationship that I didn't even recognize. And so then I ended up breaking free from both of them at the same time. I do things really big when I do them. I don't go slow. I don't go slow. It's like, I'm going to do both of these things at the same time, and it's going to be painful. and which it was, right? And that really began my healing journey of really recognizing, okay, everything that happened pre this time needs to be shattered and broken and be done with because it doesn't make any sense anymore. It doesn't make sense. And so that's when I began to start the process of rewriting my own life and saying, okay, things can be different. And I started my healing journey. I started going to therapy and I started to search, right? I started to be curious. Um, and then it really ignited it again in 2020 when my ex-husband then died. And he was the father of my children. And when he died, the grief was just like overtook me, and seeing my children grieve and seeing this pain and feeling this pain was like, okay, something has to change again. Oh my gosh, I have to continue rewriting my story again. And that was actually leading me back to that connection with more of myself, more of my true essence of me, who I was really meant to be in this lifetime, and letting go of the thoughts that I was supposed to be in this beauty industry and be this person that I had become. That was all false. That really wasn't an alignment for me anymore. And so I went back to school, and that's why I'm doing what I do now, is helping women and men recognize that they can heal from this abuse. They can heal from these past traumatic events to really find their authentic selves, and more importantly, bring in the love that they so deserve.
And I think even when you talk, I got the goosebumps, because I think it takes so much courage. And I think that's the kind of the first piece of the jigsaw, certainly, is that, you have that recognition of, this is not right. What I'm experiencing right now is not okay. I'm not prepared to tolerate this anymore. But then the bit that's the scary bit is, the only person who can change this is me. I've got to be courageous and take this leap of faith. And I think, massive kudos for you for recognizing that. And I think I don't know about you, but I find it's something that each time you take that next courageous step, it's like, it's always building that self-worth, that acknowledgement that I can do this next big change that I need to do in my life. And as you said, you shared those kind of, you've had so many of those pivotal moments where it's been like, no, this is still not right. This is still not right. Where, like, that searching for who you truly are, knowing that what you're living was not kind of aligned with you. So I suppose what I'd love to know is, if somebody is sitting here right now, and I know there's going to be people sitting watching this, listening to this, thinking, like, I'm not feeling, whether you use the term alignment, something's not feeling quite right in my life. For me, this always came out as a frustration. Like, I know I'm meant to be doing something else. I just, like, I don't know what. I'd love to know what you would suggest as the first steps for somebody who's in that space right now.
Yeah. So what really calls to me right now in this part of my journey, and to give you an answer for that, is really reconnecting back with yourself. I think we get really lost in this human journey, right? We sometimes show up ways that we think we have to. We sometimes show up because somebody expects us to show up that way, and then all of a sudden we're kind of lost in this like mess of like, okay, well, am I actually living my life for someone else, or am I living my life for me? Right? Am I doing this because I actually really want to, or am I doing it because I think I have to? And we kind of get enmeshed in all of these like tangled webs that, like, really, it's like when you want to like get clarity, it's like we got to start breaking those things down and really connecting back to, okay, well, what actually speaks to you? Like, when you were a child, right? Reconnecting with that inner child again within you, like, well, what did she like to do? Or what did he like to do? Right? What like spoke to you then? What made you feel alive? Right? What made you feel alive? And more importantly, like, what brought your joy in? Like, because if you don't have those things in what you're doing right now, then you can't expand. You're constricted. Like, all your energy is constricted, and you're not able to actually fully embrace more of your authentic self and like be in alignment with what you feel. And you're right. I love how you said frustration always came up for me. Frustration is such a good way to say, because when we're not in alignment with our expansion and we're actually kind of constricted, we do feel like, okay, why can't this go right? Why is this not going right? Why can't I make this work? Or why is it, well, it's because it's not really meant for you. It's not really supposed to be. So dig deeper, right? Why isn't it? And really start to ask yourself those questions and be more curious.
I love that, because you led so beautifully on to where I would love to take this conversation next, which is like, so how, if somebody's watching this right now going, okay, great, connect with self, how, like, what are the
Yeah. Wow.
what is the actionable steps for somebody
Mhm.
to be able to do that, so that they could get off this call today and be like, yes, Brooke's given me the steps that I need, that I can take this action in this area now. So what would you say is a starting place for that?
So I would first, I always tell everybody the questions are always within, not outside of you. They're always within. So, and when you ask yourself these questions, a lot of the times you're not going to sit right and be still enough to ask yourself these questions because we avoid them, right? Our brain has a fabulous ability to avoid the things that are going to make us feel uncomfortable, right? But when we want to get real with ourselves, if we sit down and we ask ourselves these questions of, okay, do I really like my job? Does this actually fit for me? Or does it not? And being real with yourself, right? Being real with it. Okay, is this actually in alignment for me? Is this make me feel joy? Do I feel passion? Do I feel purpose? Right? Where am I lacking that? And then also, maybe it's in your relationship. Is this relationship actually serving me anymore? And this doesn't always just mean romantic, right? It could be it could be a friendship, it could be a family member that really is draining your energy, or you haven't had healthy boundaries in the past, or been able to have those, right? Recognizing, okay, what is going to be getting me back into more of my true self? How am I like leaking all my energy in all of these other areas and it's not serving me and I'm unhappy? I don't feel any joy. I feel like I get up every day and I do the same thing over and over again. So asking yourself the difficult questions, you're going to get the answers, right? You're going to know. It's just about taking those moments to do that, right? And being curious enough to sit with yourself and do that deeper work.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. Definitely for my expansion, and what I experienced was taking those moments that you've just talked about and being really conscious and really intentional, and saying, right, I'm not happy with what's going on. I'm going to make a conscious decision to connect with myself every day and check in. And I think
Mhm.
it's a habit, isn't it? Like the more you do it, the more you can feel whether something's feels good and aligned and expansive and exciting for you, or whether something is like a hell no, because you're used to checking in with yourself and having that kind of conversation. So
Yeah.
the next piece of the jigsaw puzzle, I suppose, is, once you've had that conversation with yourself and you've done that, that digging, and maybe you've uncovered something that's potentially quite painful, when we do this process and when we are brutally honest with ourselves, like you've just shared, I think you can unearth stuff that you don't want to admit to. Like relationships is a classic example, right? Not wanting to admit that it's not the right thing for you because we're clinging on to things, because we
Yes.
cling on to what's usual, what's normal for us, right? So
Mhm.
how can we, in that moment when we've done that digging piece, how can we really embrace that truth and then move? Like, how can we get the courage to move?
Yeah, exactly. That's the piece here. It is, our ego, or the part of our brain that really wants to keep us safe. Okay. It wants us to stay in what's familiar. It wants us to stay in what's comfortable because it's easier, right? The path of least resistance is always going to be easier. So I love that you brought that up because, okay, well, once you find out this really difficult thing, you're going to want to stay in the relationship. You're going to want to stay in the job because you know what? It's comfortable, right? Okay, great. I get this paycheck every 2 weeks. I know it's consistency. I may not be happy in this relationship. He actually may not be giving me what I want, but at least he's there, right? We become so complacent as human beings. And you're right, it does take courage. And sometimes we have to have like something like a rude awakening, right, to make us actually move. I felt like I had a couple of those in my life where it was like I wasn't moving, I was too comfortable, right? And it wasn't serving me, but it was like, man, I just had to have that extra shove. We don't want to get to that point. Like that's just so you guys know, it's not so much fun, okay? Because the universe is always going to give you that extra shove when you're needing it, okay? So like just start to really tap into yourself and listen to that intuitive guide that's always there for you, right? Always kind of leading, okay, well, if this is not serving me, maybe that's why I'm frustrated. Maybe that's why I'm anxious. That's why I don't feel good maybe when I'm around this person, or maybe that's why I'm unhappy, right? How do I fix this? Okay, well, I need to go within, because sometimes we want to blame the partner. Sometimes we want to blame everybody else because that's easier. Well, sometimes it's us, right? Go within and you'll find the answers to why there is unhappiness. Maybe the unhappiness is really, it begins with you, right? And being able to be courageous enough to go and dig deeper into the why, and be courageous enough to say, okay, well, if this is not really serving me anymore, can I let it go? Right? You said we want to cling on to things, which is so true. We want to hold on for dear life because it's part of our identity. But if we can just let it go, we're going to be able to begin that process of freedom, right? Of feeling, oh my gosh, I let that thing go and something else better came in because I was able to let that thought go, or let that person go, or let that career go and step in. And that's what happened for me, right? I let the person go. I let the old belief system go. I let the old career go, right? And every time that I've done that, every time I've let something go, when it was called for me to do that, it was like something else more expansive and beautiful was brought to the table.
Literally that. I love that, because I truly believe that we have to create space for the new things to
Yeah.
come in. And the
Yeah.
only way we're going to create space is to get rid of the baggage that we're carrying, that internal baggage, the belief systems, the things that we're clinging on to. And I think, it's so often what can happen is we can have these aspirations and these dreams and these things that we want to expand into. And actually the only thing that is stopping you from, reaching that potential, reaching that goal, is that the stuff we're clinging to out of comfort and out of, this just feels safe because it's what I'm used to.
Mhm.
And I think that acknowledgement piece of saying, right, okay, well, by letting go of this thing that is no longer aligned, that is no longer true to who I am, I'm opening up space to allow in the thing that is truly meant for me.
Yes.
And I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit more, because obviously you have so many beautiful if I can put my teeth in, modalities under your belt. You have, you obviously, you're specialized in the trauma, you RTT, NLP. So I would love to, understand a bit more about how these beautiful skill sets come into play for you, and how they can help people to let go of the stuff they need to let go of, right? So they can write a new story.
For sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, we all have trauma. There's not one person walking this planet that doesn't have some form of trauma. Trauma's had a really bad rap. It's like everybody wants, oh, trauma. Ooh, we don't want to talk about trauma. Like, well, trauma, actually, everybody has it. You're not, if you think you're exempt, well, guess what? Your brain is hiding your trauma, which is what it's meant to do, right? It's meant to hide your trauma. It's why many people come to me and they're like, I don't really remember a lot about my childhood. Well, because your brain is protecting you. Your brain has kept it hidden for a reason. And it can be small traumas, right, that really continue to add up, or it can be big traumas. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people really go back to their roots. And that's really what RTT does, rapid transformational therapy. It goes back to the root cause of everything, the root cause of a belief, the root cause of a symptom, a physical symptom, the root cause of how you're continuing to show up with anxiety, or the frustration, or the belief that I am going to be a failure, or I'm never going to be enough, or all of these beliefs that were really created when you were from 0 to 7. That's when your subconscious programming begins, and when you're the most impressionable, and that subconscious takes in everything, right? And so it is really truly how we're creating our life as adults now. And if you can go back into that part of the brain and you can begin to rewire it, you can begin to rewrite your life. And that's why it's so powerful of a modality. And I stand by it because it helped me in my own journey break through things that I didn't think that I was ever going to be able to break through. And I just really speak to the fact that I want people to be able to have so much conscious awareness of why they operate the way that they operate, that they no longer have to suffer, they no longer have to not truly live, and they also can really get into the essence of who they truly are.
I love that. I love that, because I think when it comes to this, you talk about this awareness, and awareness is something that I'm so passionate about, because I think change can't happen, right, without awareness of exactly where we're at. And I think it's very easy when you start the personal development journey and you start doing this healing work, to get this is something that I used to do, right? You used to get frustrated with the thoughts that were going on in my head. I would love to beat up on myself, like, why are you being so critical? Like, come on, you're meant to be thinking positive. And these parts of self that love to have a little chat in our heads. And I think when you can have an awareness that that is not your true self, that those, when the inner child comes to play, the inner critic comes out, that it is conditioning that is causing that. There's almost that moment of like, it's not my fault, but I have the power to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's right.
I love
That's where
that.
the power is.
Yeah, I love that. It's about embracing that power, right? It's about embracing that power. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD probably, I think it was like 2018. When I was kind of going into traditional counseling, and I couldn't understand why I just like couldn't break through these blocks of having these emotional flashbacks. And it was so much suffering. It was like, I would be completely safe. Nothing would be wrong. But in that moment, it would feel like everything was wrong. It would feel like in my body, there was fear and there was anxiety and everything was happening right now, because the body has that imprint of that trauma, right? It's the same thing with someone that goes to war and they come back with PTSD, what they experienced. If you are an abuse survivor, you're going to have that type of emotional flashback and you're not going to know why. And I think that what the point is that I believe that the past can take away our power, right? And in those moments, that past event, that past trauma was taking away my power, like just like your past frustration, right, was coming to tell you something. That frustration happened in the past, right? And it was about healing that part of you that needed to recognize, this is coming to take my power away again. But guess what? You don't live there anymore. You don't live there anymore, right? And so it's being able to recognize and have the conscious awareness to say, oh, this is just that event that happened in my life, or that feeling or that emotion that I had. It got triggered. That's it. It's come back to visit me again. And I actually don't need to let it take my power away, because when you have that type of awareness, you're no longer living in the past. You recognize when the past comes back to visit, you're just here now. And that's when you really embody that true power that you have.
Yes. And I love that. And I think there's this moment of, I get to choose to not
Yeah,
allow
choice.
that thing to keep having this impact on me. And when you notice it, and I love to think of like, that very loving awareness that we get to choose to notice these things that come up for us and go, as I say, I used to be very critical of myself, and I could hear those voices, and then I'd be critical of the critical voice,
Mm.
but when you change that perspective and you approach it from that place of, of so much love and compassion for what's coming up for you, and also like, that's interesting, I'm replaying that cycle again, here comes that emotion, that one that I'm used to feeling, this is what's triggered me, but actually it's nothing to do with this present moment. It's just like an imprint, it's just a memory from a previous experience. I think that is, it feels really empowering, and it feels like you finally get to choose a different story.
Mm. Yes, exactly. And that's why I'm so passionate about rewriting your story, because you have the choice. We don't feel like we have the choice in those moments. And I remember being that person that felt like she didn't have the choice, but to sit in her suffering and feel the anxiety and the fear like overpower me. Um, but the more that I allowed myself to rewire my brain, and then the more awareness that I got to recognize when I was just going back into an imprint of old trauma, an imprint of abuse, an imprint when I had my power taken away from me, from someone else, then I was able to say, oh, well, I get to choose in this moment. Do I want to go down this same path, or do I want to choose this other path that, man, this path feels so much better, right? And you do. And that's really how you begin to rewrite the story, right? Because it's the same thing for, if you're in the same relationship that is not serving you anymore, where you don't feel the intimacy or the love, or, maybe it is abusive, right? You get to choose. You get to choose, right? You feel like you don't get a choice, but you actually do, right? There is always a choice.
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things that came up for me when you were speaking just then, because one of the things that came up was that this idea, I truly believe that expansion happens at its kind of best when we are expanding in every aspect of our lives. And what I often see, and I'm going to share this is a part of my story. When I was seeing huge, massive success in my first business, I sabotaged other areas of my life, right? Because there was this worthiness thing coming into play. And I think sometimes when we go to make these changes, when we go to rewrite our story, it's looking at all the aspects of life, like, because
Mhm.
when we have that holistic approach, you said there about obviously relationships, I see this for so many women that they can be doing amazing in every other area, but they're holding on to that relationship, and that's the one thing that is holding them back from who they're meant to be. So I just love that kind of that awareness that you kind of like that triggered in me, so thank you for that. So
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about the next piece of the jigsaw puzzle, because obviously after you've done this reconnecting with self, and working out what brings you the joy and what feels exciting and expansive and aligned for your life, and you've gone and you've done this healing process, and you've the next piece, writing the new story, like starting from a fresh identity. This is version 2.0. How did you do that for yourself?
Well, I would love to say that it wasn't messy and that it was just so easy, but it was not. It was not, right? I lost all my identity, right? I lost my whole entire belief system that my whole life was structured on. Like I was like left with like, okay, what now, right? And then I was also, I was extremely trauma bonded to the relationship that I was in. So even though it was like my decision to get rid of the relationship, all of a sudden, just like we were talking about, we don't want to let go of something. After I started the process, I was like, oh, wait. I wanted to cling on because I was like, wait, no, maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe you need to stay here because I'm afraid and I'm scared to be all alone and go on this journey like all by myself. But it didn't matter. Like I'd already set the ball in motion and it was going, right? No matter what, like that was the path that was going to happen. And so I had to sit in that like suffering of kind of detoxing from the relationship, right? People don't talk about that enough, but when you're in a trauma bonded relationship, it's like literally coming off of a drug. And that pain and that suffering. So to rewrite, to even begin, it was difficult, right? Because I was like, I didn't really know who I was. I felt so lost. Felt so lost. I lost that connection to God. I was like mad at God. I was like, well, I guess then he's just a sham altogether. And so that's why I began the healing process, right? And it did open the door to actually bring in the man that would be my next part of my journey that would actually bring me even more healing than I even knew. He was there to show me and be my rock and be my support system to help me even heal more deeply so that I could see kind of what I needed to heal within myself. And that was finally the first safe man that I'd ever had. He was the first safe space I've ever had. It was like what I had never known what real love feels like until I had him. And that is, I think, what really helped me to recognize, oh, if I don't change, I'll lose this man because was so wounded, And so that really ignited that process. But when I started to really truly dip into who I was really authentically meant to be was when I started to grieve my ex. And that whole process, it really started to make me connect back to, okay, what is this higher power? What is this universe? Where do I live? What is this reality? Because I started asking the questions, and the more I asked the questions, the more I got the answers, the more I was receiving the answers I needed to know to really help me know that, okay, everything is okay here, right? This is the experience that I came for, and this is what I need to embody so I can really be who I'm meant to be here. And that there is this higher power that I feel this connection to now that has helped me expand and shown me and led me through this journey very much so. And then shown me, the steps, okay? Like when you start to really tap into that intuitive nature that we all have within us and listen to that, we are on that direction and that path to be in alignment with how we can begin to let go of everything from the past and really begin to say, okay, it's okay. Now I can do this. I have the bravery. I have the courageous spirit. I know I can do this. If I went through all of that and survived all of that, I can do this. Right.
Absolutely. And I really love that you share this. It's like this gradual unfolding. And I think that's, especially in a world where we live and everything on social media seems so, like everything's right now. Like I want it right now. And I think to have that really honest and open conversation about the fact that it is like an unpicking, and it is ask the next question, follow the next intuitive nudge. Like it's those baby steps that we take that actually compound in over time to rewrite the story. It's not like suddenly, ta-da, I've arrived and I'm a new version of myself.
That's what I wanted. Trust me. I was like, well, why can't I take these ginormous leaps and just be already where I'm supposed to be? Well, I recognized I couldn't do that really quickly. Right.
Yeah.
I was, it was taking the small intentional steps and listening, right, to where to go to be able, and I'm always doing that, right? Like I'm doing that every day and I'm doing that every week, every month, right? I'm always learning. Like this is a journey. Like this is like, and the more curious and the more you can have fun doing it and being like, okay, well, that thing didn't work out. So I'm going to go ahead and see what actually feels right to me. You start to understand, you get like, oh, now I know what doesn't feel good. And now I understand what good feels like. So now you start to be able to decipher like moving forward. Each time it gets easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And and that playful approach, I think, is so powerful, because especially when you're doing the healing work, it can be so you can I don't know how to word that other than it can be deep and it can feel heavy and it can feel but when we understand that we're here in this place and time to experience it all and to move through it, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that we can be playful with this process, that we can explore the dark even with lightness here, the journey becomes more fun, doesn't it? Because it becomes less about, okay, I'm trying to escape this, and it becomes more about, oh, how can I get to this? Like, what are the stepping stones that I can take to move me closer to what it is that I actually want? So I love that you brought playfulness up there, because I think it's something that often when we talk about the, you know, like things like trauma and the heavy, hard hitting stuff, it can feel like, like very serious conversation. You know, it's a very serious thing, and to be able to understand that, you know, there are also ways that we have to go into the dark, we have to explore that stuff, we do that deep, you know, shadow work, but also we get to play through this journey as well.
Yeah, it's like it's so much about balance, right? It's all about balance, right? Yeah, I mean, there is going to be some difficulty, right? And there is going to be like some really amazing things, because when you elevate and you expand, you feel that, right? You feel that energy, you feel that within you, and you feel like, oh my gosh, like I can look back and, you know, I can look back at last year and be like, oh, look how far I've come today. You know, even by just doing the small baby steps and intentional work, like there is no wasted time, or there is no wasted things that you have not done. Like everything that you've done has brought you to here. So it's like, you know, just looking at life in that way and just seeing that playfulness of how much you've navigated through things, and just look at it as like, yeah, this is a really fun game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, it has been so incredible talking with you today. Are there any kind of final you know, takeaways you want to leave our audience with before we can talk about how they can connect with you and how they can reach you?
Yeah, so obviously I think you're going to let everybody know how they can reach me. I have a freebie also that you all are going to be able to enjoy. I would say that the best advice that I was ever given was that heal your mind and change your life, because that was what it was for me, right? I thought everything externally was going to somehow make everything better, or, you know, give me happiness or joy. And it really was about healing my mind. It was actually going into those places to actually begin that process of rewriting my story. And every time that I do that, it's like I just see how much better things can get.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been such an absolute pleasure to have you here as a guest. And I know that everybody's watching this and taken so much away. I will obviously be sharing all the ways that you can get in touch with Brooke and learn more about how you can work with her if that's something you are feeling called to do. And I'm sure that if you have any questions on anything that she shared in today's interview, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to answer them. So thank you so much, Brooke. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll be talking again soon. Bye for now.